What's up guys, my name is Ace, and last night we got a massive update for Warzone, and by massive I mean file size, not so much gameplay related changes that we can actually see right now. But with this there was a little bit of weapon balancing, some of it stated in the patch notes, but most of it not at all. And therefore in today's video I wanted to talk about the main changes that I know about so far with this update. Keep in mind there's probably a bunch of other stuff that happened behind the scenes that I just haven't picked up on yet, and more testing will be needed over the coming days or even weeks in order to find this stuff out. Now, of course, I will leave a link to the patch notes in the description down below, but they're pretty much useless anyway since they don't really cover most of the changes that actually happened. But let's start it off with the only weapon balancing change that was stated in this, where it's the actual weapon itself that changed and not attachments. This was a nerf to the AUG, and what they did here is they just added more recoil. And you can see here at 14 meters, there is a very noticeable increase to recoil on the AUG. Keep in mind this is without any attachments equipped, so you can tighten that up quite a bit. But overall, just judging by this testing, keeping in mind at this point I really haven't had any time to sit down and grind a bunch of gameplay time with this, but just looking at it here, it looks like the AUG is still going to be an incredibly powerful gun for mid-range engagements, but it's just going to be much less effective at competing against sniper rifles, for instance, at really long ranges. So you're not going to be able to stretch it out quite as far and maintain that same effectiveness and that same laser accuracy. But this by no means should be destroying this gun. It's likely still going to be one of the top tier meta guns to use. Now in the patch notes, they mentioned that for a bunch of the attachments, they had altered things to make them better match the descriptions. And therefore, of course, with the AUG, I wanted to test the strike team barrel because pre-patch, this didn't state that it boosted your bullet velocity, and yet it boosted your bullet velocity more than any of the other barrels, while also providing an increase to your fire rate. So it's just the obvious choice pre-patch. And it turns out, based on my testing, it's exactly the same post-patch. So you're still better off using that strike team barrel, even though it doesn't state that it helps with your bullet velocity. Now, another thing that was mentioned in the patch notes is they've completely changed the Cavalry Lancer barrel, so it once again states that it deals damage to vehicles. And this is how it was initially stated when the Cold War guns were added to the game, but it didn't actually do what it said it did. It didn't actually increase damage to vehicles. Now, after this patch, it does actually increase damage to vehicles, and I did a little bit of testing with this. First up, I tested with the Stoner, and against a cargo truck at really close ranges, without the Cavalry Lancer barrel, it takes 107 rounds to disable a full health cargo truck, and then with the Cavalry Lancer barrel, it takes just 53 rounds. So it looks like it's literally doubling the amount of damage you deal to vehicles, keeping in mind that it's only vehicle damage. This doesn't double your damage to enemy players. So that's good to know that that barrel is now doing what it states that it's supposed to be doing, and we do have that extra option for dealing extra damage to enemy vehicles. I don't necessarily recommend using this for most setups. Most people would rather have extra bullet velocity and range with the other barrels. But if you want that specific class that's just designed to take out vehicles, maybe for solos where everyone's driving around in a cargo truck, it might be a viable option for you. As for the next change, this one was completely hidden. It wasn't mentioned anywhere in the patch notes, not as far as I can see at least. They finally fixed some of the key magazine attachments, and this effectively nerfed the FFAR. Not by a large margin, but it nerfed it a little bit. If you guys remember pre-patch, with the FFAR, if you're using that 6th magazine attachment, which is what pretty much everybody used, it's the 50 round mag that also improves your reload time quite noticeably. This one was supposed to hurt your aim down sight time, that's what it stated that it did, and yet it didn't do that. And the FFAR was one of the few exceptions to this. For all of the other assault rifles, this final magazine attachment actually did slow your aim down sight time down. But it turns out with this update, they did fix this, and now with that 6th magazine attachment, instead of having a 250 millisecond aim down sight time, which is an SMG level aim down sight time, it's going to be slowed down to 317 milliseconds, and it is going to give you the slowest aim down sight time out of any of the magazine attachments. And while you still get that same great boost to your reload time, that's really not as important as aim down sight time in a gunfight. And therefore, if you are using the FFAR, it's most likely going to be in your best interest to switch to the 4th magazine attachment. This one is also a 50 round magazine, so you still get that same magazine capacity, and you will reload it much slower than the 6th magazine attachment, but your aim down sight time is going to be a bit faster. Overall though, while this change wasn't nearly enough to properly nerf the FFAR, and it's still going to be that #1 top tier gun, this change will provide a little bit more counterplay if you're using an SMG in close quarters against an FFAR user, because you'll be able to get your first shot on target accurately faster than they're able to, whereas pre-patch you couldn't do that because it would aim down sight just as fast, if not faster than your SMG. Now, it's also worth noting, the other exception to this was the M16. This was another case where the 6th magazine attachment didn't hurt your aim down sight time when it was supposed to. And now, after this patch, it does do this. You can see there, the 6th magazine attachment will slow your aim down sight time down to 400 milliseconds. And therefore, once again, you're probably better off with the 4th magazine attachment, which gives you an aim down sight time of 350 milliseconds. Now, moving on to the next hidden thing that I discovered with this update. If you guys paid attention to the Cold War multiplayer update from yesterday or 2 days ago, the Magnum actually got a brand new barrel. Like, they replaced an old barrel with this new one, and this is the snub nose barrel. And with this, it says that it boosts your damage, and it turns out it actually does. And I did find this to be quite surprising because for all of the task force barrels, for instance, on Cold War weapons in Warzone, they previously stated that they would increase damage when they didn't actually do that, because that would create a pretty big balance issue for Warzone. So I really didn't expect that this barrel would boost damage against enemy players in Warzone. However, it does, and it does by quite a bit as well. So just taking a look at it, for an upper torso shot, keeping in mind this is within maximum damage range, so you have to be fairly close here. Without this barrel, we deal 82 damage to the upper torso with the Magnum, which is quite a bit of damage. However, with this barrel, an upper torso shot will deal 101 damage. One single shot to the upper torso is 101 damage, which as a finishing weapon is pretty crazy. If you break somebody's armor, all you have to do is just one-tap them with this Magnum and they're done for. And it's also worth noting, for headshots, we deal 149 damage up close, which is also quite a bit of damage. So the addition of this barrel is actually a pretty massive buff to the Magnum overall, and I'm likely going to be making a dedicated video on this in the near future where I do a bunch more testing, because theoretically, if you're using this akimbo with this particular barrel, you can technically kill somebody instantly if one of your bullets hits the upper torso and the other one hits the head. Or if we aren't mixing headshots in there, even if we're just hitting him in the leg, it's only going to take you 3 shots to kill a fully armored enemy, which can happen very, very fast when using this akimbo. And we may end up seeing the Magnum come out as the new akimbo snake shot from back in the day. I don't know if it's going to be quite that powerful, but it looks like it is going to be a very viable option as a secondary weapon when using this new barrel combined with the dual wield attachment. But with that, that's pretty much everything I've discovered so far with this update as it relates to weapon and attachment balance. That was the main focus of this video. There was some other stuff that went on outside of weapon balance, like you can now buy an RCXD at the buy station, and also the zombies thing got a little bit more interesting because if you open that golden crate, you can get a special key card that allows you to go to the containment protocol system, and from there you can buy brand new unique items, which is kind of a neat idea. But yeah, my overall thoughts on this update as it applies to weapon balancing, at least based on what I know so far, I'm quite disappointed. It seems like they took a very, very small step forward here. Like, at least the changes are generally positive changes as far as I can see, but they weren't really enough to drastically change anything or mix anything up. It's just going to make it so the FFAR and AUG are still dominant, but slightly less dominant than they used to be. Now, of course, my opinion on this might change as we discover more hidden changes in the background that happen to attachments or weapons, but that's another thing that I'm really not liking about this update, and this is their terrible patch notes. I'm still amazed at how horrible they are at creating accurate patch notes for a game that's this massive. It seems like with every update, they hit like a randomize button, and they don't even seem to know what changed because they can't seem to include it in their own patch notes. So that requires guys like True Game Data, JGod, and myself to go in and do a bunch of painstaking testing just to see if and what they actually changed with their game. So yeah, that's my thoughts on this. I'd like to know in the comment section below, what did you guys think about this Warzone update? And also, what do you think about the fact that they don't cover everything that changed in their patch notes? Just let me know all of those thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.